The first one we are picking is Sarah McMahon, who is a minus 220 favorite against Marion Renault, who is a plus 180 underdog. I just think McMahon has fought the best of the division, at least from when she was closer to the top of it anyway. She hasn't necessarily beat that top talent, but she has faced a lot of it, including Ronda Rousey, Miesha Tate, Amanda Nunes, so on and so forth. So she's definitely coming in from a standpoint where she has a lot of experience against top talent. And Marion Renault, I mean, in her last few fights, she has lost to Ashley Evans-Smith and a draw against Bethe Correia. So, I mean, I don't know how much you can look forward to from Marion Renault's standpoint, but I think Sarah McMahon probably uses her wrestling and her experience in bigger spots to beat Marion Renault Saturday.
We say this plenty of times, but me and Bryce came into MMA during the Ronda Rousey era, and then I think Ronda Rousey fought McMahon before I even became a UFC fan, which was plenty of years ago. So saying that McMahon has been around for a while, she has experience, as Buju says. I just see her winning this with her wrestling, being an Olympic wrestler.
I was about to ask if she was the Olympic wrestler because all of Ronda's opponents for a while just meshed together.
I confuse Sarah McMahon and Alexis Davis for the same person 100% of the time.
That's what I was really thinking. So definitely, I also have McMahon here. I just think that, like you guys, we're pretty much beating a dead horse here. She has fought the top of the mountain. She may not have won, but she's got that experience, and she's a former Olympian, so she's probably going to wrestle her pants off.
In the next fight, we have Renan BARAO, who is a minus 155 favorite, against Brian Kelleher, who is a plus 135 underdog. If you would have said a few years ago that Renan BARAO would be fighting on the prelims of a card, somebody would have laughed in your face. We know he isn't the same BARAO that he was just a few years ago, but he still has experience against the top of the division. Obviously being the former champ before he lost to TJ Dillashaw. He fought all the best guys because that was his job as champion in that division for so long. And Kelleher is a relatively unknown. I mean, he's beaten Iuri Alcantara and Damian Stasiak and lost to Marlon Vera in his UFC run. So pretty much unknown. He hasn't really fought a top guy. And despite BARAO not being the same as he used to be, I do think he probably beats Brian Kelleher in this fight.
I feel like Buju highlighted basically what I was going to say. BARAO is a former bantamweight champion. He's now fighting back at bantamweight. He was a title contender, and I feel like he was always in the second tier. Like, he was never like a championship fighter after his championship reign or whatever. But I feel like he is still a mid-level fighter, I would say, and I feel like he's going to still pull out a win.
I also have Renan BARAO, but man, is it a bummer to see Renan BARAO on a prelim of a not very good Fox card. I mean, this dude was murking guys at bantamweight for a long, long time, and now he's fighting a guy that's 2-1 in the UFC against I think Alcantara at least was ranked. So I think BARAO is just way too good. He's got way too many skills, but I mean, he's got to show up. He shows up, he's probably top 10 guy in the world.
The first fight on the main card this weekend is Mike Perry, who is a minus 340 favorite, against a plus 280 underdog in Max Griffin. 14 of Perry's 16 wins are by KO or TKO, but he's only 1-3 in decisions. Griffin has only lost to Colby Covington by KO, and he has 7 KO stoppages of his own with 2 submissions added in there, although he's never really beat a marquee guy. I'm a little surprised at what the odds are in this one, just because Griffin isn't so easy to KO, and that's obviously Platinum Mike Perry's go-to. So a little surprised that Perry is such a big favorite, although I do think he's probably the better overall fighter in this one. I'm expecting a very good fight. I wouldn't be surprised if Perry does lose, but I am going to go ahead and pick him in this one.
I did some research, and they said both fighters made UFC debuts in 2016. Does that seem like it's...
Yeah.
I feel like I thought I heard Mike Perry's name like longer before that.
I think that sounds about right.
But in saying so, Mike Perry is 6 years younger. I mean, that's not a big difference in the UFC considering that their prime could be in their 30s. But he's also a slight favorite. I don't have too much knowledge on any of these fighters, but him being the favorite, I'll go side with Perry in this one.
just to let you know, since you aren't too familiar with Mike Perry, he knocks people dead. That's pretty much what his trick is. He's like a much more athletic Derek Lewis, Mark Hunt type.
That's a
Um,
wild comparison. Isn't he a
oh, I
Both
welterweight?
mean,
heavyweights.
yeah.
Okay.
To be fair, I mean that's a good way to describe it in my eyes. And he's going up against Max Griffin, who's 1-2 in the UFC. I mean, he lost to Colby Covington in his UFC debut. He knocked out Eric Montano, and he is now coming off a unanimous decision loss against, I have no idea how to say this dude's name. So I just don't think he's Mike Perry's probably going to knock this guy out. I'm going to say it right now.
I will say that if Perry doesn't knock him out and Griffin can drag him into that third round, like I said, Perry only has one win via decision. So the longer the fight goes on, the better for Max Griffin.
For sure.
The next fight on the main card is OVINCE St. Preux, who is a minus 125 favorite, against ELIR Latifi. This is a very close fight odds-wise because Latifi is also minus, but just 105. OSP only has 2 stoppage losses in 22 fights in the UFC and in Strikeforce. He's riding a 3-fight win streak into this one. But Latifi has struggled against top-tier guys, most notably his nasty KO loss to Ryan Bader. This is a close fight to pick. I think OSP will probably use his length well against ELIR Latifi. I think he's finally starting to find that groove where he's doing that a little better. And like I said, Latifi has struggled against top talent. And whether or not you want to call OSP that, he is among the top of the light heavyweight division for a reason. Say what you want about the depth of that division, but OSP is at the top of it, and I think he does probably beat ELIR Latifi this weekend.
OSP and Lear Latifi?
ELIR Latifi.
Yeah, Latifi. Was expected they were supposed to fight on the 27th of January of this year on UFC on Fox 27, but however, Latifi was injured and pulled away from the fight, and now they're fighting again, so it's a rescheduled fight. OSP is coming off a pretty cool head kick versus Corey Anderson in the third. And I don't know, I'm just hoping that it carries on to this fight. And I'm not necessarily saying it's a TKO or KO, but I feel like he's going to win.
And if OSP can keep Latifi at distance, I mean, Latifi should watch out for the same head kick that Corey Anderson had to deal with.
Yeah, so for one, I was recently shown a picture of ELIR Latifi riding a horse. That was majestic.
The greatest picture in MMA history.
Yes, if you're watching or listening to this through our website, I hope Buju puts that picture there because it needs to be there. It needs to be everywhere. But to the fight part, this is a fight that I'm not very optimistic towards because if it goes much past the first round, I feel like it's going to be very, very sloppy, like a couple 250-pound heavyweights sloppy.
Yeah, I could definitely see that happening.
Yeah, and I think that even no matter what, I don't see a real area of the fight where OSP is at a disadvantage. He's the longer guy. He has more. I think he's more explosive, being a former D1 football player. And I think he's going to win this one.
The co-main event of the evening is Jessica Andrade, former title challenger, who's a minus 300 favorite, against TECIA Torres, who's a plus 250 underdog. I think a few weeks ago I said Valentina Shevchenko is probably one of the 5 best women's fighters in MMA right now. And I think Jessica Andrade, at this point in her career, if not in the top 5, I think she's very, very close to it. I think she's just a lot tougher and more well-rounded of an opponent than Torres has faced. Obviously, Tisha's only loss is to Rose Namajunas, which is impressive in itself. But I think Torres, most of her success has come against mainly stand-up fighters. And I think Jessica Andrade is just more well-rounded and is going to be able to deal with Torres' main weapon, which is her wrestling. So I think Andrade probably beats TECIA Torres in the co-main event.
These are both relatively young fighters, so I like to go off the age factor probably a little bit too much, but I have Andrade winning too. I feel like she's a really good all-around fighter.
So for this fight, I mean, for one, I looked up both of their records to see what kind of opponents they had faced up to this point. And Andrade had started her career at bantamweight, which is crazy to me, considering she has a win over who's likely getting the next bantamweight shot, Raquel Pennington. That's crazy to me that someone that's fighting at 115 was like fighting well against people that are 20 pounds heavier. With that being said, Tisha Torres' side, it's been pretty much middle of the road fighters, and she's lost to Rose and beat Rose once. So I think that Andrade is going to take this because she's probably going to manhandle her because she is freakishly strong for this division,
Yeah.
and she'll be on the outside looking in for the next title shot after Joanna gets that back.
And I was just about to mention that same thing too. Just going off the top of my head, I don't think Tisha has dealt with anybody that has near the power that Jessica Andrade does. So that's going to be something to look into this Saturday as well. In the main event of the evening, Josh Emmett is a plus 130 underdog against Jeremy Little Heathen Stevens, who is a a minus 160 favorite. Stevens has only been KO'd or TKO'd once in his entire career. Josh Emmett, obviously his most notable win was his last fight against Dennis Bermudez, where he had that surprise knockout in a major upset that got him to this spot. But I think Jeremy Stevens is obviously Dennis Bermudez is a very good fighter. I just think Jeremy Stevens is a whole nother level, and I think Josh Emmett is going to struggle very much against Jeremy Stevens, despite what the odds may show. And I think Stevens definitely takes this one.
Yeah, I have Stevens coming off a 2-fight win streak and also being the favorite. I just see him winning. I don't even know. I want to expect a finish, but I'm not going to predict anything.
I want to say that Josh Emmett has the body of a Ninja Turtle, very much like TJ Dillashaw. It is very impressive. But I do not believe that he is going to win this fight. I believe Jeremy Stevens is going to likely finish him, and the little heathen train will continue to roll.